I'll call this meeting of the Onslow County Board of Education to order, and Mr. John?
And I call the meeting to order for the Onslow County Board of Commissioners at this time.
Thank you all for coming. You know, today I want you to visualize that we're in a nice ski lodge with a fireplace and sitting around our little individual tables with coffee, and that we're here just to have a good conversation and to be frank with one another. Most of us around this table are good friends and acquaintances, and when we leave today, we're going to be even better friends. So I'm looking forward to the conversation. Of course, our main agenda item is the K-3 class size legislation, and that's where this discussion is. I'm sure that everyone around this table has heard this discussion so many times from different sources that you're well versed in it. Today, we just want to make sure that all of us are on the same page and we're saying the same things that are important to us. The unintended consequences of the K-3 legislation are why we're here. No one certainly disputes the fact that the K-3 reduction in class size is important, but those unintended consequences are the things that have presented challenges both for the Board of Education and for the Board of Commissioners. Mr. Bright?
Thank you, Ms. Thomas, for the introduction and agreeing to meet with us in a joint session. I think we've had joint sessions last year, late November or so, and as a result of that meeting, we had a lot of good conversation and a lot of good communication. And the whole idea about having this meeting with our local delegation, and I really thank our local delegation, Senator Brown, Representative Cleveland, and Representative Shepherd for being here, at least, and our other
Mr. Muller.
Muller for being here. Sorry, sir. And at least letting everybody know what page we're on and how we going to address this situation and how we can work together. The county commissioners has traditionally worked really good with the Board of Education. I think we have a funding formula that's probably the top formula in the whole state. A lot of counties and a lot of school boards has called us to get a copy of the funding formula because they like that as a model. And we fund it based on the student population, so many dollars per student. And we've had a really good working relationship. We've had a change in the guard. We've got new school board members that hadn't been here a long time, and we have Rick Stout, our superintendent, that hadn't been here for a long period of time. But I'm looking forward to hearing the presentations today, and looking forward to the discussion and the input from our local delegation and from the school board and from our county commissioners, that we have all our members here. So I'd like to congratulate you for allowing us to meet like this and come together with a joint effort. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And we are appreciative of the fact that we're sitting around this table together with a group of like-minded people and people who have the best interest of the state of North Carolina and Onslow County at heart. Mr. Stout, would you like to open the discussion?
Sure.
With some comments?
First of all, I want to thank our delegation here from the General Assembly, Senator Brown. Thank you. And just to let everybody know in this room, we've had many conversations, and I appreciate Senator Brown and sitting down with me and being very candid as we go back and forth and talking about the K-3 legislation and what Onslow County and what our unique needs are in terms of dealing with K-3 class size legislation. And I'm not speaking on the other 114 systems that we have in the state, so what I'm going to talk about is basically targeted toward Onslow County. And what our unique needs are is, with the legislation, if it changes to its current writing, would cause us to have to move 51 teachers that we currently have or have to hire new from our upper grade levels, or hire new to be put in positions from K-3. What that provides me is I have to figure out where the space is. And I think that's the biggest issue that I've talked to Senator Brown and other representatives is that we are a growing system of, we grew 348 students last year. And with that growth, it's been on average of that for the last 5 years, I know, in terms of over 300, and I think it goes well beyond that for 10 or 15 years. What we currently have in space-wise is we're going to need 38 classrooms that we currently don't have. So those classrooms, when I say classrooms, we have to look at it different ways. One, in this system, we want to keep our enhanced teachers. That's our art, music, and PE. And I know across the state people are threatening that, that they're going to lose those positions, but I can tell you Onslow County is dedicated in keeping that because that's part of our roots and tradition here in our county. So with that said, what would happen is if we utilize every space that we have and move those teachers out and put them on the carts, which would be really devastating for our schools because they really use those classrooms, the art teachers and that, not put them on the carts. We're going to need, if we keep them in their classrooms, we're going to need, I believe, 38 mobile units. And out of those 38 mobile units, we have 10 that are existing that we can move, but there's an expense to that, and 28 mobile units. Obviously, no, we cannot build schools anytime within, the next, 3 or 4 years, and also it becomes a funding source for us as a county as well. So knowing the worst case scenario or the best case scenario is having 38 mobile units that we have to deal with, which is also a major undertaking. So if we had to buy 28 mobile units, it still costed us over $2 million in terms of trying to put space where we don't have to eliminate the positions where the current art, music, and PE people are in place now. If not, if we did move everybody out of their classrooms, we're going to need 14 mobile units anyway. Even if we moved everybody on the cart, we're still going to need 14 more mobile units. And that's still over $500,000 that it's going to cost us in terms of trying to put that in place. I just want to talk a little bit about mobile units. That might be a cheaper solution for us, but we also know there's a number of issues that go with that. Safety and security of where mobile units sit, and in today's age where you have people coming in off campus unexpectedly, and you also have unexpected things like infrastructure and IT needs that are not the same in a mobile unit that actually exist in the school itself. And today's technology, we're using everything for testing and those type of things, and it's more likely that we'll have problems in our mobile units than we would in the main structure of a building. So obviously, safe and secure weather affects it too because it's outside, and depending on where you go with that, you also have the setup issues that we have in terms of concrete and foundations and everything else that goes along with mobile units. So obviously that's an issue for us, and trying to get that done within that time frame between now and the beginning of the year is also would be a task that would be very difficult.
Quick question, or do you want us to wait?
No, that's
I
fine.
just was curious, how many mobile units are we having to use up now in the school system?
Steve?
Before we even look at that.
We have approximately 200 mobile units in place right now, with 190 of them being used for classrooms.
Would you repeat that, please?
Approximately 200 mobile units in place right now, 1 or 2 being used for storage purposes only, but then about 190 of them are being used for classrooms.
So I've talked to you about space, and the other issue that we have is being a military district. We're over 26,000 strong in terms of students, but you got to remember, 38% of that is military impacted, and that's about 9,000 to 10,000 students. What we do see that other systems do not see, and this is what makes us unique, is we have a rollover from the beginning of the year to the end of the year of about 5,000 students. So when you look at our class size adjustments, they're constant in this county because obviously, they're getting orders and they're going somewhere else, or we have new kids coming in, new children coming in. So that's a task that I know most of the counties other than Cumberland or Wayne County that really faces that to what we face. So basically, in a nutshell, we are restricted by our enrollment, our lack of space, and we've been talking about lack of space before K3 even came along. So this is something new. This just kind of complexes it quite a bit in terms of how we're going to go about meeting the need of the new legislation. So that's kind of an overview, and we'd love for any questions to be asked in that regard.
You mentioned rollovers too, so 5,000 at the end of the year. Is that negative or positive? Is there usually an increase at the end of the year, or is it a decrease in students?
You never know if it's gonna be a negative or a positive. Most of the time, we're increasing students, especially around the Christmas time this year. You'll see increases coming in from the military, in the January, cycle.
And probably that 5,000 is not one for one, class for class. I mean, it might be.
It'll be
Right.
spread out.
Spread out over the whole.
So, I believe Sandridge Elementary School actually had, if I'm, Barry, 38% turnover?
It's typically 25%.
25%.
25%, but it depends on what's going on in the world.
Yeah. So we have high density military, schools, I call them, because they're surrounded closer to the base, that are really impacted in terms of, change.
Mr. Stout, for the benefit of the folks here, and the school board has actually done redistricting already to try to address lower population schools versus high population, so redistricting has been a part of this process.
Absolutely, we've done it twice since I've been here, and that's something the superintendent doesn't love to do, and, because it does, move households, and when you move households, that upsets folks at times, but, our agreement was that we would use the capacity to the best that we can by making sure students fill those seats in schools that have more freedom. Now, obviously, we've done that as much as we possibly can. We did it last year down at the Sand Ridge, Queens Creek, and, we'll continue to have to do that. With our new school opening, we'll have to do that shortly here with Richlands Elementary and Richlands Primary School, and they're both excellent schools, but we're still gonna have a town hall meeting talking about why children are moving and trying to balance those two schools out so we can do the best we can on that.
How much more space is that new school going to give you?
So basically, we're typically building the schools now on 900 capacity. With the new legislation, that actually reduces the capacity of that school, quite a bit, from what we expected it when we first planned it. So, because K-3 is the biggest, population that we have our military students in. But, we have about 850 some students, I believe, right now, on average at the two schools, and that's where it's gonna balance out to be. So, we'll have some capacity there for a while, but obviously they keep coming and they keep growing up there, and we're gonna have to be looking at a third school not far away. I think we've already had some of those discussions. That area is a high density area as well.
I think it's probably worthy of mentioning, though, that Richlands Primary will become a K-5 school, which will accommodate a different category of students,
But we also need to emphasize, it's just not a facility problem. It's a teacher problem. When you start talking about hiring 51 new teachers, in the university system, the East Carolinas, the Appalachians, those folks, those schools that have strong programs for putting out teachers, they're not there. And 51 is just for our system. When you look across the state, where are these teachers gonna come from?
That brings up an interesting question. You're gonna have the larger school boards and larger school districts gonna be competing for teachers and
Yes,
good
sir.
teachers.
Well, unfortunately, we've done a pretty, good job, or great job, and I thank Barry and his staff for doing that, because one, we do live on the coast, and two, we do have an influx of some teachers, and we're working on licensure now to try to make it easier, and I continue to lobby, everyone that's up there to General Assembly to make it easier for those teachers from military backgrounds to be able to come and teach and not, take the hurdles away. But at the same time, 51, and if you look at our university systems and our college systems, they're way down on teacher candidates, and trying to pull from that. We're doing what the North used to do. Is we used to go to the North and pull the teachers down, but they would come easy because they couldn't find a place to go. Now we can't find them anywhere. It's becoming a real battle, and obviously also does have an advantage over some of the smaller counties, but at the same time, you gotta have a good pool of high qualified candidates, and that's what we're seeing a shortfall on that quite a bit.
Yeah, you want good candidates.
Well, I know we've ran several pieces of legislation to make it easier for you to, I guess, old lateral entry, I'm not sure to call it that anymore, but where you can
We're
go
talking
through a
about
process.
K-3, but potentially doesn't this have a ripple effect from 4 all the way up to
Yes.
Yes, it
the
does.
high
school.
So, yeah, exactly. Thank you, Commissioner Price. So out of the 51, if I have to transfer people from within the district, that means it's gonna be from grade 4 through high school. So when I take teachers down to satisfy the requirement that is the K-3 requirement, I'll have larger class sizes, you know, somewhere between 4th grade all the way up through the high school. It may be elimination of a high school program that we've had to take a teacher, and sometimes their qualifications don't meet K-3 legislation. So that's where we have to get into the balancing act to find out which teachers are teaching where, that can actually teach K6 or K8 and actually have them transferred in that position. So it is a daunting task to be able to do that, and you will see larger class sizes from 4 or 5 on up if we don't get some type of flexibility. And that's what we're really talking about.
Didn't the school board here move some of the Sneeds Ferry Elementary students to the new middle school? which
Yes.
is,
Fifth grade.
Fifth grade.
In order to get.
We sure
more
did.
space
We
and
did, and ironically, Dixon Elementary School had such a booming population this year that half of that, or 3/4 of that we moved to the middle school has already filled back in. So it's a great thing. I mean, I've been in a district where you shut schools down. You don't want to be in that district, you know. But we're in a district that we're growing and we're enhancing what we have. But the problem is because it is a continuing battle for space.
Commissioner Price, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
if you don't- Just to reiterate what you said about the upper effects, the lower effects of that are that we lost 4 preschool classrooms because we needed their space. And as Commissioner Buchanan knows, we have a wait list right now because there are not enough daycare facilities, there are not enough classroom facilities for us to address the needs of our community.
And let me ask, I failed to mention, we have a lot of pre-K programs that are now existing at our school sites. Those are the things that we might have to get to the point that sometimes you decide, do you keep pre-K in order to get to the class size? Now, I know there's a number of things that we've talked about, we can use combination classrooms and those type of things, but I can tell you when you talk to the teachers and you talk to those around, combination classrooms in that lower grade level is a challenge somewhat. And I know we'll have to talk about doing that because obviously we'll not be able to meet all the things that we talked about here being in place. The combination classrooms are in play, as well as anything else that we can imagine that would be able to help meet the legislative requirement.
But if I could, I kind of want to take a step back, and I know it's me, for me, and I would bet the other legislators would tell you the same thing. We all go visit a lot of schools, and when we talk to teachers, especially in K-3, one of the things I bet I've heard, I can't even tell you how many times I've heard it, is you go in that classroom, they got 26 kids in that classroom, and they say, how in the world do you expect me to teach 26 kids in this classroom? And for us on the state level, we know that we're funding it at a whole lot less than that. But the teacher thinks it's our fault. We get blamed for that, even though we have funded it to a level now that's a lot less than that per classroom. And I'll just give you some numbers because I brought them with me. But we started this process in 14-15, and we reduced kindergarten from 1 to 19 down to 1 to 18, and grades 1 through 3 from 1 to 18 to 1 to 17, and that was in the 14-15 year. And we put $41.9 million in our budget to do that. Then in the 16-17 year, in grade 1, we lowered that from 1 to 17 to 1 to 16, put an additional $26.9 million in the budget to do that. So in total, you can see it's right at $70 million, and over the time, from when we started this, we've put about $221.4 million into class size reduction. And I think what frustrated a lot of us is the LEAs want a lot of flexibility. And I think the state has done a great job of giving LEAs a lot of flexibility on how you can spend money. And I think that's a good thing, because we don't need to micromanage you guys. I think all would agree to that. But at the same time, when you start going to these classrooms, and you still see 25 kids in a classroom, and you funded $220-some million to reduce those class sizes, and teachers keep telling you, how do you expect us to manage 25 or 26 students? You can understand on our side how difficult that is. And I know it's been a challenge for space. But this started back in 2014-15 budget cycle. So it's not like it happened yesterday. And so I understand the concerns that you have as a county commission, having to fund schools, and for the school board trying to figure out how where you put all these kids, because I do think it's a different scenario for growing counties. But I can just tell you, we see it as a real concern, and I think all the stats show that smaller class size is better for the student. I don't think there's any stats out there that argue that point. And I think that's what we've been trying to address. And so, and the other piece of it that I think made it difficult is when we started hearing complaints about lowering class size, we wanted information. Because when you were putting this money out there, and we said, well, if you're not reducing class size, where are you spending the money? You're getting the money, where's it going? And you would have thought that we had asked for somebody's health records. You couldn't get any information. And that got really, really frustrating for the state, is because we're saying, look, we're giving you the money. If it's not going to class size reduction, where's the money going? Nobody would tell us where the money was going. So that made the situation even worse. So then, instead of having all the flexibility, what ends up happening is, because you can't get information, then we'll say, well, then we'll just mandate it, because nobody will give you any information. And that's why we're here today, is because of those scenarios that have taken place over the last 3 or 4 years. And I'm not blaming anybody, but you can understand on our side, when I got teachers complaining to me about their size of the classroom, we tried to address the issue by funding it. Nothing changes. We know you're getting more money, and then you won't tell us how you're spending it. What are we supposed to do? And that's kind of where we got. Now we got to find a fix. And I understand. I know there's a group working on this, and I don't know. Have you guys heard? I tried to get some information the last day or two where we're at.
I told Paul earlier,
Yeah.
I talked to Linda Johnson and Craig Horn, both chairs of education. They're working on this, but they wouldn't provide me any information. They didn't have any results yet. And I said, well, we need something to take with us so we can discuss this. But they didn't have anything yet.
Yeah, that's what I got. I couldn't get any information either, and I was trying to get it before we got here this morning, because I know it's a joint committee between House and Senate, and I know they're trying to find a compromise somewhere. And I think that's exactly what will happen. I think there will be some flexibility somewhere to try to work through this. A lot of counties have already done, I guess, what the legislation intended. And if you're a school system that's not growing, you can probably work your way
Right.
into it.
It's much easier.
All right, but I do understand that counties like ours that continue to grow, it creates a whole new issue. I would say this, though: the best thing you can do for us to help us work through it is get us the information we ask for, first of all, and to help us understand what's going on. Because it is frustrating when you've spent that kind of money and you have no results on what the intent was.
Rick, what is our average K-3 classroom population?
Right now, it sits right at what the legislators called for, because if not, we would have been penalized. So currently, we're sitting right at the requirement for this year at 20 for kindergarten, 20 for first, 20 for second, 20 for third. That would be the legislative max average. So when I say, you may see a couple more in a different school, but overall in the district, we have to keep the average at 20. Because, again, in January, we may have an influx of kids coming in that would make a difference. But the new legislation, no, will go to 18 in kindergarten, 16 in first, 17 and 17.
So we're around the 20 student population?
We have made it to the 20 average.
So that's a lot better than what Senator Brown was saying on, so we are trying to work
Right,
with
but
it.
you may walk into a classroom that has 22 or 23, so we're talking about an average, so there's a max on that for 23.
23 is the max.
Okay, and then next year, the max would be 21. But the problem is, if we have 22, you have to make a whole, the legislation says if you're over one, you have to make a whole new classroom if you're over the max or the average. So that's where
Yep.
us, if when January comes, all of a sudden we get an influx of K3, then we're dealing with trying to find additional space somewhere else when we don't already have it, or a mobile unit at the time to do it. So that's push and tug. So we are different from many districts. And with the, well, he's talking about and sharing the numbers, we always try to be transparent. And I'll be honest with you, Jeff Holloman has been a leader in finance reform that is being done now, as well as probably leading in information that's been done in the past, and he has some information on that in terms of what you were talking about, that I don't know if the other systems have actually provided or not. And that might have been, you know, as you
Most were
said,
not.
most of them have
Most were
not,
not, yeah.
were not, upfront with that. But, you know, from our district, we wanna show you, you know, where we're at, and because our numbers are increasing, obviously a lot has changed. You know, we talked about enhanced teachers, you know, back in the 90s, our enhanced teachers were counted into the allotment process when we averaged everything else. Yeah, so it used to be that way when we had BEP back in the middle 90s, and then they rolled the allotment into all one. So actually, when you look at a 100 student school, well, that's not realistic, and you get an allotment for that 100 that we currently have. You take your allotment teacher out of it now you only have 4 teachers versus 5. So that's the way it is now.
You also have other funding sources if you need that teacher for a short period of time to fund them.
Right, well, we would need them all year long for that teacher,
Well,
for
I
an
realize
enhanced
that.
teacher.
What I'm saying is, you can also move money around to keep them in the classroom if there is a problem until the legislature gets around to funding them, which I believe.
Oh, yeah, currently we're doing that now, yes.
Rick, we did a resolution already where we sent to our local delegation, but in our resolution, we included the bullet in there concerning the military and us being a military-friendly community, and that's one of the movements the state has pretty much promoted, that we want to be a military-friendly community. What, out of our 25,000 students, what percentage of those are military dependents?
Yeah, 38%.
38%.
That really, that we count in the books, military impacted, or that correlates to our military. 38% of our population is connected to this base, which equates to 9,000 to 10,000 of our students out of the 26 plus are military connected in some way. So it's vital, our partnership in the military bases, you know, and how we handle that with our liaisons and counselors has been, you know, phenomenal, really, to be honest with you. And everybody will tell you in this state as well, in this nation, our partnership with that has been outstanding. So we toot our horn on that because that's been great for us. And I think most of the parents who come in and come out, you know, will say that. And that's why we started our virtual program, to be able to share that, so when they leave, they can complete it if they're in high school. So we've had a lot of advantages of that, but the disadvantage is the population growth. And to be honest with you, it's the non-military population growth we're dealing with now because of the infrastructure that you're seeing in small businesses that's causing our growth to occur.
That's good news. And
Especially in these very areas.
but then our impact aid from the federal government per student is way down from what the county provides per student. So I mean, if you could share those numbers with.
Current numbers, Jeff, on impact.
The impact aid, first of all, is a pretty complex formula, because they go through and do the calculations on that, and it depends upon the connection of that child, whether it's uniform, dependent, living on base, off base, or whether it's, civil service, type dependent. And then you also have to look at how the money comes out over a period of time. The money actually trails the time that the student is in school by a couple years to more. For instance, we have to do a count on our 20th day of the year. So back in September, we do a count. You do an application the following January. You don't see the first funding for that until at least the next November or later. And then you have to and they give you a part of it then, and then the other portion of it comes out 2 to 5 years after that. So it's kind of a complex thing, so it's hard for me to say a specific number for you there, but you're right, the impact aid is not fully funded at the federal level. They're not contributing the full amount that the formula calls for. But we're very thankful to get it, because without that, we would be in very bad shape. A lot of things that we would not be able to do here for our kids.
Question, now, we kind of have had a whole harvest of low wealth money. Things are starting to change as far as what we qualify for low wealth. How's that looking, just out of curiosity?
Well, and one of the issues with low wealth is the Bureau of Economic Analysis changed the way they calculated per capita income several years ago. And Onslow County went from being, I think, probably in the 80% of state average for per capita income to jumping up to over the state average. In fact, we got up to around 120, 125% of state average. We were ranked the second highest per capita income county in the state based on those changes, the way they calculated. They started including a lot of military benefits and things like that wasn't actually spendable income. And when our per capita increased, that took us out of qualifying for low wealth based solely on those factors, that and the property values. Now, this past year, we have come back down enough where we just barely squeak in as considered low wealth, but the funding is far from where it used to be years ago if we were doing it based on formula. And we thank you immensely for the efforts that you have done to keep us at least whole to where we were a few years back. That has been a tremendous boost for us to be able to have that stability in our planning and being able to utilize those funds.
Do you think as it's changing that you'll get back to where, I think it's 1.2 million now in the budget to hold you harmless? You see it where that'll grow here soon?
Well, the calculation for this year came in lower than the 1. I think it was around 300,000 had we been doing it based on the formula. With the new way that the BEA calculates the per capita income, and as long as that remains 50% of what the formula is based on, I don't think we're going to go back to the good days of the past of getting that funding. It would be great if the legislature could consider looking at that formula for low wealth, and instead of having 50% based on per capita income and then the 40% on property value, 10% on density, if they could allow people to get that composite score as it is now, or to base it solely on property valuation and get the better of, and that way counties like Onslow, who have been negatively impacted with this change in the per capita income, could still see the type of low wealth money that they used to receive in years past. And
I think the problem we will have is what's going on with Cumberland County, where they kind of skew the numbers for us.
Well, we want to thank Senator Brown. He's been very helpful in that regard. I'll be honest with you, as the superintendent, and then I'll sit down and have conversations with the representatives we have in this room. It does not happen across the state like that. So, we do have conversations, and we don't always have to see eye to eye, but at least we understand where each other's platform is in terms of what we're looking for, and it's always for the benefit of the kids. We do believe in smaller class sizes. I don't want us to leave this room and think that smart class sizes don't benefit. They do. So we do appreciate that. We're just complex with trying to make ends meet, so to speak, and making sure it's done right.
Career Tech Center, will that help in any of the classroom issues?
Yeah, obviously, when you're taking some students out of the main building, it won't help with the K-3 as much as it's going to reduce some of the school capacity in the high schools, because that's where we're pulling them from. So we'll have more space there. That's not the space we needed for the show.
I know that you probably can't answer this, but I just want to put it out there. We desperately need a waiver so that we can continue to conduct our business the proper way. When school begins each year, we can adhere to those restrictions, or the law. But it's that growth that we get in the middle of the year, and even when we go to set up a new classroom to accommodate that growth, we're having parents and even teachers will say, we'd rather not lose our students, we've had them 6 months.
Right.
We want to be able to protect the integrity of that classroom even if they have 2 more students.
Do we know when even if something develops to address this, it won't happen until what, May?
It's gonna be in the short session, it's probably gonna be May.
May. What,
And
I know that puts you in a tough position.
And we'll be, I mean, if it goes past March for us, we're all, we're already done, because we have to make plans that soon
budget?
for budgets, and the county has to have it, so, we're gonna really ask over and over again that the legislation and the police pick this up sooner and have these tough conversations, and if they are gonna do something, move on, at least by March, because I don't know what we're gonna do if it goes to May.
Gotcha.
Can I go back to what Pam just said? Are you saying that you can get the classroom sizes down to?
Not for this new legislation, we have to add 51, we won't be able, if we do that, it's gonna cause all this ripple effect that I talked about at the beginning of the session.
Okay.
But we're gonna get to
So
where we
what
need to
you're
go.
asking is going forward to have the ability that in the middle of the class year, you don't wanna have to restructure classrooms due to
Yes, sir.
students moving in and out.
And this year, and the guys need to correct me if I'm wrong, this year, we adhered to the 20 that passed. And that was, even though it was difficult for us to find the rooms, and we did lose some classrooms because of it, it still was better than what we will have to face coming up, because we'll need every space that we have. But in the middle of the year, we get a growth, almost 300 students a year. So and usually they're in the lower grades. If we have 20 students in that classroom and we have to put extra students in there, we're having to move a few out of every class to fill another classroom. And it's not really a good education decision. And most of the parents and the teachers will tell you, I'd rather keep my class and have another student.
No, I can agree
Because they're
with
used to
that.
that continuity.
But are we talking 2 students or 10 students?
Well,
That's where the rubble comes.
I would think that it would be reasonable to say it would be 2 to 3, it wouldn't be 10.
Yeah, but the other side of that, educationally, it's all about relationships, teachers, students.
Right.
And we're talking about teachers, but those little folks, they've established a relationship with that teacher, and all of a sudden at mid-year, you're gonna take them and move them,
And they have to adjust again.
and then it's just not a good situation.
Madam Chair, we might need to discuss a little bit with regards to Plan B. If Plan A is that we're gonna wait until March or May, when legislature comes back in session, and we're going to hope that the legislation or a waiver is favorable for us, is it going to fit into our budgeting plans for this year? So from a realistic standpoint, what's our plan going forward if we don't get a waiver, we don't get the legislation changed? What are we going to do as a county, both the schools and the county commission? Because that's what we have to address.
Plan B for us would be basically move all of our enhancement teachers out onto their carts and use every space available, even if it means part of the cafeteria. That's what we'll have to do. We have 10 existing, we said we need 14, we'll have to find 4 additional mobile.
Mr. Proctor?
I've never taught kindergarten through 3rd grade, but I know a few people who have. As a matter of fact, one of them is my daughter, teaches 3rd grade, and she sees 20 as a very manageable number. Yeah, I know teaching world history and U.S. history, you go from 32 down to 28, it totally changes the dynamic and makes everything, so 20 is a very manageable number. So why not just compromise at 20 and declare victory and go to the House?
Honestly, I think this committee is gonna find a compromise. I wish I could tell you what that is, and I don't know, you know?
I think they will, but I think the timeline.
Yeah, the timing is the
I think
issue.
the timeline is what everybody is.
We're gonna be up there
concerned
next week, and, you know, maybe we can dig into this and try to find out some information, but I tried to get something forward today,
I did too.
and I couldn't get it, so.
We understand there's a dilemma that, you know, that you have other business other than the county business to address, and you have other business throughout the state that you have to address. Our big issue, I think, dilemma, I don't wanna call it issue, a dilemma, is that we've got to present to our public what we're going to be doing in March. We're gonna be entering our budget sessions right now. So we've got to know and have a plan that will maybe not be the best plan. Bob's right, we need to know what we're gonna do as we move forward. And of course, our commissioners have a different challenge on their side.
Sure.
Well, exactly, because we appropriate money to the school board, when you come to us based on the funding formula. We don't have the luxury of saying Pam or Brock or the school board member how to spend that money. We don't have that luxury. We are pretty much mandated by statute to fund it. And then if we don't fund it, there's another remedy, you know, through the courts that we're facing a possible litigation that we don't have any control over, and the school board has that authority. Of course, we have such a good working relationship. I don't ever see that coming, but there's a possibility. But I know there's happened in other counties before, and the school board has mostly always prevailed. But we don't have the luxury of telling you guys how to spend your money.
Yes, sir.
I want you to understand, I think the Onslow County Commissioners and Board of Education have always been very close. And you've supported us, I want you to understand.
Absolutely.
Earl?
I'd like to follow up a statement Mr. Williams made about Plan B. The option of converting your gymnasiums and cafeterias and auditorium spaces into classrooms. That happened 30 years ago, and I've said this before. Only a handful of people in this room remember that. We were growing so quickly, so fast that the building programs, Mr. Brown, you visited a lot of the schools at that time, remember what it's like. You got two board members served as principals who had to deal with it. Mr. Price, you mentioned that at Southwest High School, there was a class in the cafeteria. It will happen. That is Plan B. In addition to taking all of our music and art and PE teachers, which all have designated classrooms designed for those programs, putting them on a cart. Now, you're talking about something being humiliation. You're going to lose those teachers and you're going to lose those programs. And this county has placed great value on arts education and physical education. It is part of our culture. And it can happen, and I can see it happening once House Bill 13 sunsets.
Do we have the ability to go out right now and place classrooms, portables, on the sites that we're going to need them most as part of Plan B?
We would have to go to the permitting process on, and if there's a, obviously we have different scenarios and permitting depending on what district or township it's in that we actually have to go through. So that's why we need to know sooner or better so we can start that whole chain of actions in terms of making sure we got those in place and ready to go before August.
Yes, question too. When your Plan B, you said that we would have to reduce the enhancement programs, we'd have to get them on mobile carts and stuff, right? Did I understand that correct?
Right, we would keep the enhancement programs, but they would have to be put on a cart. When I say a cart, that means they roll classroom to classroom.
Now, the question is, you said, do we have any mobile units right now that we can put out there? But based on what you said, we have 200 now that are in existence and 190 being used. So that means that only leaves 10, but you have 2 for storage, that leaves 8. So in my eyes, that means no, we don't have the mobile units available.
We have 10 that are currently existing that can be used as in a condition now that can be moved.
Okay, and those 10 can cover it?
No, so we need 14. So we'll have to buy 4 additional mobile units to cover the 14 total. But that means The other 38, I told you the max number to begin with, those are where we need the spaces and moving enhancement teachers out, that we're gonna have to create spaces. Because we don't have anyone, you know.
Mr. Knapp, that means, that's just taking care of the students we have now.
Right, that's, I know that's based on the current
I've been counting
population.
to 300, some will probably
Yeah.
have come in our schools.
Rick, does that take into consideration, where you have a larger classroom where you could have 3 teachers?
So,
Does that consider
So if we
that as
can't
well?
get the 4 classrooms or 4 mobile units that we currently don't have existing, somehow we'll have to talk about putting 2 teachers in the same classroom or whatever we have to do. Like I say, those scenarios are yet to be played out, but we're gonna have to do what we have to do in order to open up in August. I'm just telling you, this is not an ideal situation whatsoever. And whoever falls in that situation, obviously, aren't gonna be happy campers. But to be honest with you, mobile units, if we know we got 200 mobile units, it is not an ideal situation when you walk out on the campus. And some of our schools look like trailer parks
Mr. Bennett?
now.
I'm sorry. Let me address something Mr. Taylor said. I agree, putting a teacher that has a classroom on a cart is a bad thing, and I've done it when I was teaching, and it really debased me. However, if you handle it properly with the teachers and make sure you do some good communications as a group and have them understand that this is a stopgap measure, I don't see them running off like you insinuated.
Today, teachers,
Well,
they come and go. They go to where they can find the best situation, teaching situation. So that's the part of the competition. Either we provide them support or we don't.
may I respond to that? Because I lived that at White Oak High School. We did have that situation. We had our classrooms in the cafeteria. We took our multicultural area, partitioned. We had 4 classrooms in there. We took the teacher's lounge. It became a classroom. And you're talking about those teachers on the carts. I had 12 of those that floated every period, every day. Now think about that, because this is important. You're going to hire a new teacher. The new teachers are usually the ones that are on those carts. You're not going to take a tenured career teacher that's been teaching 20 years, take them out of their classroom and let them float. So you've got those primarily new teachers on those carts. They don't have a classroom. They're floating. So the first opportunity they have to go to another school, another unit, where they have their own classroom, where do you think they're going? They're not going to stay with you. You're going to lose those new young teachers. And it's a terrible way to start a new teacher in their career.
Going back to what I was talking about, though, you could have 2 classes of 25 and have a teacher in each classroom, and then have a third teacher that spends time in both of those classes
Right.
and meet the requirement. So there's a lot of flexibility on how you meet the requirement. Now, is that ideal? Probably not. But you've got classes close to that now. So I'm just saying, the way you can meet the requirement is have 2 with 25 each in it, and have that third teacher that goes between them. Now, is that ideal? No, it's not, but again, that meets the requirement, and, you know, it's a way to work through the issue.
And this is a result of the requirement that they can't have one student over the maximum.
Well, if it's 16, if it's 1 to 16, 3 of them 16, 48, so you have 25,
Because the law
24,
requires that
2
you
classrooms,
have
meet the
another
requirement
classroom
for
for
another
that
teacher.
one student.
Mr. Bennett?
Yeah, I was gonna ask, the capital or capital building program that was put in place several years ago, with the bond referendum and all that, did that take into account this mandate, or was that before? I'm looking for a historical perspective.
That's come after.
Mandate came, so that building program was put in place in anticipation of the expected growth of the school system, but this is an added
Not the reduction of classroom size.
Can we have a discussion with regards to moving that program up? Otherwise, we know that it takes 2 to 3 years to get a classroom built, or a school built here, by the time you go through the permitting process, the construction process as well. We have, I believe, 4 on the schedule right now over the period of time. The next one, I don't believe even comes online until 2021, so we're talking, that's if we started on schedule in 19. We're in beginning of 18. Is it possible that we could look at the options to move the schedule up so that we can get one or two of those in the queue this year? It won't solve our immediate problem, but it will help to alleviate the problems we'll have 3 or 4 years from now.
That's easier said than done.
I understand.
I think we'd have to change the funding formula. We'd have to go back into negotiations with the school board and the county commissioners to change the funding formula. Is that correct, Mr. Cotton?
I think this would certainly bring the funding formula into play, yes, sir.
Well, just to bring us back to while we're here, is to talk about the legislation for today.
Correct.
And that is going to affect us for next year. And the other solutions, we may have another talk about that later.
I would agree with you on
So,
that.
The only thing I guess, getting back to that, Pam, what I would say is, I think this committee that's meeting is gonna do everything they can to find a compromise. But I think everything that you can do to try to find a way to get as close to it as you can will surely help us work through that, because then I think we could go back and argue, look, they're doing everything they can, just can't get there. But I think you do have to look at, classes where you maybe have a teacher that roams or just different scenarios on how you can get there. And I think it just helps us try to find a compromise that everybody can agree on.
Harry, can you, I know that there are lots of things that y'all can consider, and I don't, we have such growth. If there was a chance of a waiver that addressed counties that have exceptional growth every year.
And I think that's what's gonna have to happen, some type of flexibility on those counties. That's what I
And
think.
being military impacted, I think, is another connection of that.
Yes.
I
I wish I was on that committee, but I'm not, because that's exactly what you've
Get
got.
on there.
You've got, I can't be on all of them.
She doesn't want you to ever come home. She doesn't want you to ever come home.
I sent the speaker a text just to ask him what his thoughts were, because I asked him, I said, can we move on this sometime next week or the week after or whatever, when we can go back into, because we're still in session. And he said he was fine with moving on with something so that it would keep you off from having the problem that you're gonna have with your budget and so forth in March. So, now, I don't know if that speaks for everybody on both sides, but Speaker Moore said he was fine with that.
If the committee has some workable solution, I'm sure we can move it.
Well,
The problem is, does the committee
Yeah, like-
agree to a solution?
Right.
Like I was saying in one of the meetings I was at, if we had, the county commissioners had $70 million today to build those 3 schools and just gave the school board a check, it would still take two
Right.
years, 2.5
Right.
years to even get it built. So we still way outside of the timeline of this particular requirement for, August of 2018. So there's no way physically possible it could be built even if we had the money.
You're right, you're exactly right.
Mr. Superintendent, it's February, we've got to comply by August. Do we physically have enough time to get mobile classrooms here by then?
Well, we have the 10 existing that are currently within the county, it's finding the additional ones that would
To
have
go
to
through
go
the
out.
permitting process
And-
to help?
And here's the challenge, we're not gonna be the only ones looking for mobile classrooms.
That's it.
You know,
Oh, yeah.
we're gonna, the mobile classroom business, I think that would be great stock to have right now, if you were involved in those companies, but,
Build a mobile classroom.
we'll have to do the other things that we talked about doing, it's combination classrooms, and those type of things will be simplified.
Put the new mobile classrooms at the primary. My son ended up moving in like November. It didn't get set up till November, so kind of puts a strain on the teacher to have to move, even if she's keeping her kids to a new.
The dynamics in Raleigh too, a little bit on this. This was more of a Senate initiative than it was a House initiative back in 2014. And you don't want me to get into the budget process, but at the end of the budget process, there's always some money that the House has and always a little bit of money the Senate has. And the Senate spent their money to do this. So to try to back up is always difficult, and you can understand that. And, so, you know, that's kind of dynamics, I guess, going on.
That was your week.
And Raleigh.
Eugenics. And
Right, you
we
spent,
compromised.
you spent
Burton
money a
wanted
different
the
way.
Education reform, and Senator Tillis wanted the eugenics, payback to
That's
the
right.
victims.
So, so it's a lot harder, you know, to take a step back sometimes.
Other comments from anyone? Certainly want everybody to have a chance to voice their opinion, and
I just appreciate the time we've had today to get input from our local delegation, and both the House and the Senate side, and the Board of Education, and all of our audience here that's interested in this. And I know the parents are gonna be really pleased that we can get together and talk about this and communicate and come to some reasonable resolution that's doable. I think Senator Brown in the paper one time stated that there should be a middle ground. And I think there'll be some middle ground. I think we'll come to that middle ground, and the school board or the superintendent has worked very hard to get that compliance in place as much as possible. So with that being said, I really enjoyed the opportunity to sit down today and talk about this and get everybody at least on the same page of where we're at and where we need to go.
Yeah, let me just say one thing. I think it's, I agree with the chairman. I think this is a great opportunity to talk, but just from my viewpoint, it's kind of ironic to me because of the bill. Because the bill is being stressed to focus more attention to the student, to give them a better educational experience, be it we're going through this, which is actually taken away from that effect, because we're talking about mobile units. So I think it's just really ironic that we're going through this process. We're trying to do good for the students, but in effect what we're doing is we're drawing away from them. We're not giving them the educational experience that they really need because of this. So I think it's vital that we talk about this and try to find a better solution or a quick solution for this, because the number one interest is our kids, and to give them the quality education that we can give them in the best, you know, environment possible. So this meeting, I think, you know, I really appreciate you coming out, Senator and representatives, you know, to talk about this, because it shows that you're interested, and that means a lot. So thank you.
Just respond to that, Rob, and I would say reducing class size, I would be willing to bet that 80 counties have been able to comply with what the law intended.
Right. So
Those students in 80 counties will truly benefit from what the law intended to do. For the growth counties, it's more of a challenge, and that's what we're dealing with here today. But I don't think anybody can, at this table, would argue that if we get class size down to what the intent is, that's gonna be good for the student. Now, how we get there, you know, that's the challenge, and I think our intent was to try to help the student every way we could, and help the teacher. I mean, you think about that teacher.
That's not a question.
It's a huge difference for them as well.
Like Chairman Bright said at the very beginning, and some of you have mentioned, we're kind of in a unique situation because we're in a military community. I think we were looking at the numbers there, you know, you're talking about 38,000 or 38%, that's 9,500 students that it affects, you know, our system. So, you know, we have a challenge ahead of us, absolutely.
As a retired career teacher, there's no doubt in my mind that you folks were trying to do the right thing by decreasing the class size. But it's also great to be able to sit down with the commissioners, my fellow members, and you folks. It's called teamwork. Been very positive, and I appreciate that.
And there's been so much misunderstanding in the public about this. You're talking about pleasing the parents. I was attacked by a grandmother in Walmart, they verbally, over this issue. So.
You don't want to get those grandmothers up there.
Oh, man. She was a clerk there.
well, I remember in response to what Phil is saying, that there was a letter to the editor months ago, and it was all good intentions of the letter were to say that she supported, or he, I can't remember if it was a man or a woman, they supported the not eliminating music, art, and PE, and that the classroom size needed to be adjusted, blah, blah, blah. Well, there was so much incorrect information in it that we felt like as a board we needed to try to put a fact sheet out there. I still don't know that the fact sheet is understood by everyone.
Probably.
So the people who really need to know, I think, are here, and we do appreciate the fact that you gave up your time and you didn't have to play in the snow today, but that you did come.
You hit a main point there. because in the last meeting that we had, in some of the press releases, there wasn't misinformation out there. They thought that we were saying that these enhancement programs were going away, which was exactly not what we were saying. You know, they would be effective in a certain way, but they are not going away.
They just look different,
That's right.
just look different.
Well, we got a groundbreaking in Jones County today, somebody wants to go to that.
I can't wait to see the school.
Yeah, it's nice to have a conversation that doesn't involve the weather.
That's true.
Thank you all for coming today. I hope this has been beneficial to each of us, just to reiterate to ourselves what our challenges are and how we are working together. I appreciate our representatives and our senator being with us today. It's nice to welcome you as a newcomer.
Well, thank you
And
for inviting me to this.
hope we'll
tonight.
see you more often in
I
our
appreciate
county.
it, and it's nice to see the commissioners and the Board of Education getting together and sitting down. And talking about Onslow County, which my district is all of Pender and part of Onslow. And of course, the Pender County commissioners have the same issues that you do. They don't have the military impact that you have, and that really enlightened me today, so. You know, and Pender County is growing, just like
Yes,
Onslow.
it is.
Yes,
So
yes.
Pender County has a similar problems to these few counties that are doing it, so I appreciate the meeting today, and I appreciate you inviting me, so,
Thank you.
Thank you for coming. Entertain a motion from the Board of Commissioners to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
Second, all in favor? We're adjourned.
Can't go anywhere here. May I have a motion for the Board of Education to be adjourned?
Motion made.
Second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye. All opposed, we are adjourned. Thank you so much, gentlemen.